Let's talk about the Google Ads policy against cloaking. I'm going to explain what cloaking means and what some of the common reasons are that Google may flag a website and may suspend a Google Ads account for cloaking. And for context, my name is John. I'm the CEO of StubGroup, and we're a premier Google partner, digital advertising agency, and we are the #1 resource in the world for fixing Google suspensions and policy issues. And we've been having a lot of businesses reach out to us recently, in particular, with issues around cloaking, with their ad accounts being suspended for cloaking. And so that's why I wanted to make this video, to really dive in and say, hey, here are some of the things that we're seeing and thinking about when it comes to this policy. So first of all, what is cloaking? Well, it falls under Google's circumventing systems policy. This is one of what Google calls their egregious policies. So it's a very significant, severe policy, or I should say violating it is very significant and severe in Google's mind. It is something that can be overturned. It can be appealed successfully, but it is hard. It takes a lot of effort and work to get there. And of course, as with all things Google, there's never a guarantee of what Google may or may not say. So what is cloaking? This is basically Google saying, hey, we think you are trying to hide information or show different information to different people. The thing that they're trying to avoid is, for example, you having one set of information that their robots crawl, and maybe they think your page is about one thing. And then in actuality, you're showing different content that may actually violate Google's policies to other people who are navigating to your website. Now, it's not necessarily the case where Google's not necessarily saying, hey, you are showing content that violates our policies, but they are saying that we think you're doing something to cloak and misdirect or redirect, and therefore you could be doing something that is going to be disadvantageous to people who are coming to your website, and that's where the problem lies. So Google gives a couple of examples of what they mean by this in their official policy. These examples are non-exhaustive, as is usual for Google, but some examples are that you might be showing Google's robots, a landing page that complies with Google's policies, and then showing different content to other people. Example they give is maybe you're pretending to Google that you're a website selling clothes, but then you're showing people ads for guns, which guns are against Google's other weapons policy. And so that would be an example of cloaking, misdirecting. Other examples would include a pop-up that blocks access to the majority of your website content, which would prevent Google from accessing your landing page to just determine whether or not the content on there is compliant with policies. Other examples would be tricking people into clicking on your ad by promoting a topic they're interested in and then sending them to irrelevant, unrelated content. And then also just actually sending users to a completely different website that violates Google's policies. That'd be a problem. And then you can get really kind of funky about it. There's a thing called click trackers that you can use within ads that can kind of redirect URLs. And if you're doing that in a non-compliant way, again, sending people to a non-compliant page or content, that could be an issue as well. Now, the common things that I see this triggering, so obviously if you're an illegitimate business and you are trying to do cloaking, that's a problem. You shouldn't do it, can't do it, and that's why you're suspended. But I'm going to assume that you are a legitimate advertiser who is not trying to do anything wrong, and you're getting flagged with this policy. So what might be happening? Well, there's a lot of things that could be happening, but some of the most common things that we see would be that there is something on the technical side of your website that is triggering this policy. So for example, you might be using a security plugin on your website that might be allowing most people to access your website as normal, but then maybe you've got some settings in there for if people come from a particular country to your domain, that maybe you show them different content. Maybe you block that traffic. Maybe you take them to a different page for whatever reason. Well, that could be something that could trigger Google, because their robots and their manual people too also aren't just coming from the US. They're coming from different countries, different IP addresses, and so if they see that, and they are kind of blocked or redirected by that security feature, that could trigger this policy. And that's a great example of where you're not trying to do anything wrong or malicious. You're actually trying to do the right thing. You're trying to keep your website secure, but you could be unintentionally violating this policy or triggering this policy. So there are a lot of different security plugins that we see that sometimes deal with that. Could be firewall settings, could be just other things that you have set up on your website to show different content. Now it gets a little bit funky here because There is some kind of grace room in this policy where, for example, a lot of businesses will have dynamic components to their landing page. You might go to the landing page and it might insert the name of the location that I'm browsing from as a way to personalize the landing page. Best offers in XYZ city. That is not against Google's policy. Google actually says here that it's okay to show slightly different content to different people, like showing a landing page or ad destination, different languages, different special offers, etc. So you can split test things. You could split test offers. You can dynamically insert keywords, names of towns, things like that. But the problem is if you are significantly altering, again, that example of, hey, you're pretending to one person to sell clothes, another person to sell guns, that type of thing is a problem. So what you want to do is you want to take a really close look at your website and use different monitoring tools to look at your website and see, are there any security issues like what I mentioned that might be redirecting or being triggering cloaking? Or are there any other settings that you have set up that could be, again, unintentionally triggering this policy? And then the last thing I would say is we've definitely seen some situations where it seems like the problem is fixed. Maybe there was a security setting that's been changed. It's no longer doing the redirecting, but Google still doesn't seem to be accepting the appeal. And so there's a lot of kind of persistence that we're putting to this on our end and working with our team at Google to try to escalate things and get things solved, because there are certainly times where Google's system seems to get stuck. And it's pretty clear that you fixed the problem they identified, but for whatever reason, the system doesn't accept that or agree with that and flip the switch to bring your ad account back online. So if you're dealing with this problem and you need some help and you want to work with some experts, we'd love to help you here at StubGroup. Go to StubGroup.com and get in touch with one of our team members, and we'll get to work and hopefully getting your ad account back online with Google.